Hi, good evening, everyone. This is the February 2025 meeting of the Needham Community Preservation Committee. As a reminder, this meeting is being broadcast to the town's YouTube channel and via Zoom. And is being recorded for publication, later viewing, and administrative purposes. Looks like all the committee members are here today, so I won't do a roll call. So let's jump to our agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move minutes, approval of the minutes of February 5.
Let me announce it first.
He's a pro.
All right,
It's not bad.
does somebody want to second that?
I'll second it.
All right, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. And
I've been rehearsing all week.
so, we're lucky to have our applicant from East Militia Heights Development tonight. I don't know, Betsy, do you want to make an introduction? Or
Maureen?
I'm sorry. Yeah, do you want to make an introduction or you can introduce yourself?
I don't want to get anyone's name wrong, so if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, why don't you come up to the table.
Developer and Charles River representatives. Yeah, name's right, but.
Sorry, grab a seat. Oh, one extra, so sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. How are you?
So I can start. I'm Anne Marie Badra, the president and CEO of the Charles River Center. And this is Hillary.
I'm Hillary Ryan, Vice President of Development at the Charles River Center.
Bill Grogan, President of the Planning Office for Urban Affairs.
I'm Phil Crean. I'm a project manager with the Planning Office for Urban Affairs. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for coming in.
Of course, thanks for having us.
You can take it away.
All right, so I'll start. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Charles River Center. We are a nonprofit agency in Needham. We have been here for 69 years in Needham. I'm the fourth CEO. And I say that because that's pretty extraordinary. And it really speaks to stability and institutional knowledge of our organization. We touch more than 1,500 men and women and families every year. We provide services to people with developmental disabilities, and our mission is to empower and support people with developmental disabilities, including autism and acquired brain injury, and offer high quality individualized services to foster independence. We currently have 33 group homes in and around the area. We have 3-day services, a family support program, in-home supports. A family support is when a child with a disability is living in a family home and they need assistance. So they call us to provide that assistance. And we provide staff or navigation through the state system, whatever it is. And in-home supports, we provide services to about 30 to 40 people living in their homes independently. They have a developmental disability or intellectual disability or autism. And we come in intermittently on a very planned basis to provide services to them, money management, grocery shopping, the healthcare oversight, that kind of thing, whatever they need. So we have experience in that. We support, our primary funding is through Medicaid. Some of our services are funded through Medicaid, but primarily through the Department of Developmental Services, which is, we contract with the state to do that. That's primarily our funding source. We have some private pay individuals, but not many. Some of the services we provide are entitlement services, and some of them are waiver services, meaning people have to be deemed eligible for the service. And it's through legislative appropriations, Josh is here, and which we get some funding to do these services. We're currently a $43 million organization, which is quite a leap from 69 years ago. So we're very proud of the work we do. We're accredited by the CARF, and we're also licensed by the Department of Developmental Services, and we score well on all those, very well. On all those license and accreditations every time. So we're very proud of our services. So we take us back prior to the pandemic, as you well know, the land across from the Charles River Center was owned by the Army, and they put it up for sale. And we thought long and hard about what could we possibly do with this land. We knew that we wanted to get it. It was a sealed competitive bid, as you know. And we knew very well that we wanted to use the land. We weren't quite sure what we were going to do with it. We had a lot of outreach with experts in the Commonwealth in terms of what should we do with it, what's the highest and best need. We formed a subcommittee of the board to decide what's the best use for the land. And we said, well, whatever we decide, there was a lot of options: nursery school, more group homes, elder services, all these things. But we said, let's look at all these options through using three key principles as our lens. One, it had to be mission focused. We're a nonprofit, we're driven by a mission, it had to be mission focused. And two, it had to meet an unmet need for our population, for the disability community. Very important for us that it's just not a surplus service, it's very much needed. And if you're familiar with what we do, we're always underfunding, there's always a need, but there are some needs that are greater than others, very compelling needs. And the third lens that we looked at, it had to be sustainable into the future. It wasn't a one-off. We didn't want to make it an administrative building. That doesn't fit our mission. So as I said, we went around and we talked to key professionals. We talked to town officials. We talked to state legislators. We talked to the Department of Developmental Services, our primary funder, and disability advocacy groups we talked to. We're an ARC, which means we're one of 16 affiliates in Massachusetts that belong to the ARC system in Massachusetts, and which is also part of a nationwide ARC organization. So we talked to them. I engaged with the experts. Autism Housing Pathways is an expert in our industry on the needs of folks with autism. We also talked to our leadership group at the center and other provider groups that I'm a part of. We talked to community members such as North Hill and Babson to get their feedback, also to see if they were going to bid on it, right? And we talked with our families and other stakeholders. So that was very important that we see, what are people saying out there? What's the unmet need? Not just now, but into the future. And so we landed on the project that we're going to show you tonight. And it's very exciting. It's mission driven. And the mission of this project is to provide inclusive housing and a full spectrum of support services that empower people with disabilities, cognitive disabilities, including autism, to live independently and achieve their personal goals and actively participate in their community. That is our overarching mission to this project, which fits very nicely with the mission of the Charles River Center for 69 years. So why did we pick on this project here? Well, we know that autism is really, every year the prevalence of autism keeps going up, and the latest data I can find was 2020, and it said that in the United States 2.42% of adults in the country have autism, but in Massachusetts it's 2.74%, and it keeps rising. Well, to keep pace with that, the state needs to come up with an additional 600 units of supportive housing for folks with autism. So when I talk about folks with autism, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a spectrum. Some people need a lot of help, and some people need very little help, and some people need sort of in the middle. About 5% of the folks in Massachusetts with autism can live on their own. just live on their own, live a normal life, go to work and so forth. About 37% need our group homes, 24/7 care, where they're always seen by staff, they're never left alone, and they need a lot of assistance. So that leaves a gap of about 58% of the people with autism need some form of staff support intermittently to provide them, services and to help them build skills where they need to build skills to live independently. And so that's what we're proposing here, is we're trying to address that gap of services. That's a huge need. So when we talk about wraparound services, well, here's our vision. This is what, should we advance the slide a little bit?
Keep on.
Oh, there you go. So we talked about all this and our needs. So the proposed solution is by offering inclusive housing. Inclusive, what does that mean? It means it's an integrated location with non-disabled people and disabled people. So it's inclusive. That's fitting our mission. Because it's not enough to bring people out of the institutions in the 70s, help them integrate into the community, get the community used to us as well, our population. So an integrative, inclusive housing that's flexible, and it's integrated with such supports like help them with daily living skills. It could be showering, it could be medical appointments. In order to live independently, we need jobs. So we will provide vocational training intermittently as much as they need, help them find a job, apply for a job. College navigation, maybe they need to go to a community college or get a certificate in food prep or whatever it is. Where we do this already in one of our day services, we have experience in this. And also social skill development. It's, widely known that folks with autism tend to isolate, and it's in their best interest to begin to come out of their selves and to integrate with the community, integrate with them. And so in this way, we're going to empower folks with ASD, which is autism, and to access their communities, to become a part of the communities. And that means use community resources, join community groups, that sort of thing, and gain employment and live independently. So the best thing that we love about this is it, as I said, it's going to address a very big unmet need in the disability community. It's also sustainable into the future. The numbers of people with autism continues to grow every year. And also it enhances the broader community. You're a richer community by our presence. That's really what we feel, and vice versa. And so that is it's going to be a very integrated project. You can advance the slide. So this is what we're proposing. We're creating 86 new affordable housing units to attract and retain household earnings at or below 30 to 80% of the area median income. So 86, some might have elderly citizens from the community, individuals with disabilities needing less than 30 hours of staff support. That's the criteria that we have to fit. Anything over 30 hours a week is considered group home. And we don't want to build a group home here. They need intermittent assistance.
That's per individual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And young professionals and public and private individuals essential to the town services. 43 handicap accessible units will be integrated support services. Now, this is where I talk about support. So think about somebody who living on their own their first time. We're right now meeting with MIT to develop some really state-of-the-art remote monitoring systems. We had a group actually show up today to observe what we do and see some of the gaps where our staff can or cannot provide the assistance that these folks need. And they're going to be designing new remote monitoring devices and so forth, which is really exciting. Health and safety monitoring will do that. So we have nurses, we'll have a nurse if they need it to be able to oversee some things or help with their doctor's appointments or whatever. College navigation, community colleges for people over the age of 26 are free. So we can help them access college navigation. Career exploration, we talked about that. Job coaching and support. adult companionship. Again, I talked about that isolation factor. Really bring them together and they're enriched by coming out of their shell and really integrating more with other people of similar interests. Peer support, so there'll be counseling counseling groups and transportation assistance. So some of these folks that we're identifying that are need that middle range of support will be able to drive, but most will not, most likely. So some will drive, some will not. So we talked to Babson and they're very interested in working with us in terms of a bus of transportation to go into town periodically, again, integrating with our neighbors. That's really the mission. So we're looking for every opportunity to get the community to see us and us to see the community. 5 affordable apartments will be for Charles River staff. I have a euphemism I use for this, but I won't say it here. But this is in the overnight, what if something happens? The staff will be there to help them, okay? A fire drill, they panic. I don't know how to cook chicken. I fell down, I hurt my leg. You know, these are things that young adults need to cope with, and we'll teach them skills on how to do that. So staff will be living in the area, in this complex, if you will, to provide assistance as needed on the after hours. Also, it helps with staff recruitment, right? So that would be very exciting to offer that. So the question is, all right, this is great, but how do we get the community to see us and be involved in this? So we are going to develop a 4,400 square foot community center that's open to the public, meaning right now, the community of Needham uses our cafeteria and our Paul Merritt Center for lots of functions, exchange clubs. We've had baby showers, we've had girls and boys clubs. I think we have a birthday party coming up this weekend. So lots of opportunities for people to come into this compound and use it and feel like it's part of their own. But also we thought, okay, what do they need? Some of this is still in development, but I'm thinking office space for the staff who are floating around this area. Maybe a rec room, again, to bring folks into this common area and socialize with each other. Computer stations, a gym. We've talked about food exchanges, like, you know, I don't have milk and it's 7 o'clock at night. Well, you can go down to the refrigerator that's open there and you exchange food. I thought that was a great idea somebody came up with recently. Also, you'll see in the development, there's a lot of green space. Well, what are we going to do to that to enhance the experience of living there? We've talked a lot about that. We know about a walking trail and maybe some covered garden spaces, that sort of thing. So some of this is still fluid right now, which means we're continuing to seek input from our stakeholder community, our families, our self-advocates, our town officials, you guys, all of that. The most exciting thing about this is there's not another development like this and to this level of integration. There are other agencies that have done this, but they've put group homes there and maybe a community center, and that's great. But we wanted to think long-term. And so this is a model community that's really it's going to be high-tech, it's going to be zero emission, all of that, inclusive community that we think can be replicated across the state. And that's really exciting. And Hillary's going to talk about now some of our outreach, like we've talked to various people. Sorry, that's probably not your turn right now. It's your turn. So now we're going to get into the model a little bit, and then Hillary will talk a little bit about the outreach and some of the feedback we've received. So, okay, project members. So these guys, Planning Office of Urban Affairs, this is not our business developing a project like this. We knew this early on that we needed a lot of help. We had a great idea. We know our population, we know the need, we know our families, but we needed a developer. And we also hired a communication consultant who's been working with us all along. So that's been very helpful. So we have entered into a partnership with the Planning Office of Urban Affairs. Best thing we ever did. This organization is fantastic. These guys are amazing to work with. We're working with top architectural teams that we've vetted out, but also Bill and Phil have had experience with, some of these teams, so they really speak highly for them, so. So you see it's the architectural team at TAT, civil and traffic engineer at VHB. I don't know if these mean anything to you. They didn't to me until now. Land use attorney Goldstein and Stores, and we have an attorney Knowles, Sheehan Patton that we were working with too. So, next slide, please. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Bill to talk about Planning Office for Urban Affairs.
Sure, and I think, picking up on what Anne Marie said, this really is sort of an incredible collaboration between two mission-oriented nonprofit organizations, and we're really excited about this. The Planning Office for Urban Affairs, we are a nonprofit affordable housing developer affiliated with the Archdiocese of Boston. And our mission is to provide high-quality housing where people can live with dignity and respect in homes they can afford. We all know the housing crisis that we're in right now. The Commonwealth just issued their housing production plan, says we're at 222,000 units need to be developed over the next decade. And we come at it from the belief that housing is a human right. We have a moral obligation to ensure everyone has a roof over their heads. And our organization was created in 1969 by the Archdiocese of Boston at the time as a response to the housing challenges at that time. And over the 55 years that we've been in existence, we've developed over 3,000 units of housing across 21 cities and towns in Massachusetts. And really, again, come at it from the belief that we're working to respond to the needs of the communities that we're working in, and to do so in a collaborative manner. We recently completed, comprehensive permitting process in Wayland, affordable senior housing, responding to needs there. We've become leaders in the supportive housing world, have over 150 units right now that are in construction at various stages in downtown Boston for permanent supportive housing. And we provide housing, that's both affordable homeownership, rental, mixed income housing. But again, recently our focus really has been at those who are underserved. And as Anne Marie mentioned, the population that Charles River, reaches out to and helps is an underserved population. And this really fits within our goals to provide integrated supportive housing in a community setting. And we're really excited about coming together with them for this. I think that, we really bring the development side experience, and for these types of developments, it's key to be able to partner up with organization that can provide the services, because getting the stability and the foundation of a home is a key first step. But we need to make sure that we have the supportive services to help individuals thrive over the long term, and make sure that they can do so in an environment that's, as Anne Marie mentioned, is able to be sustained over the long term. Part of that is pulling together both the development side from a design, but also making sure financially that it's structured in a way that can be supportive over the long term. And we've had some of those initial conversations at the state level with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And they're really excited about this type of a program, and see that this could be something that could be a model that could be done elsewhere within the Commonwealth. So again, really excited about the partnership with Charles River Center. I think it's really sort of a unique combination between our two mission-oriented organizations, and appreciate everyone's consideration of this evening. So Phil, I'll hand it over to you to dive into some more of the details.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So what I'm gonna do is go over the key elements of our submission that we put together earlier this year, talk about the project, our timeline, and some of our financing considerations, and then get to your questions. So, in terms of project design, we have a principal three-story structure that's in the centerpiece of the development. That's gonna include 68 units, a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. It's gonna contain the community space that Anne Marie talked about on the ground floor that will be open to the community there, and the broader community as well. We have 3 single-story structures to the front of the site. That will be 6 studio apartments with a community space in the center. And then when we get to the floor plans, you'll see that there's the community space in this property is very integral to CRC's programs. And to again, integrate with the community in the building and get the folks together. So, you know, as our architect laid out the site here, so where you're, you know, when you're going into the development, you're gonna see those single-story structures first, and then they put the larger three-story building in the center there, you know, sitting back from the road, but also back from the tree line there. We have what's really great about the site, I was up there today, is we have really thick, mature woods around it. Should minimize any, you know, visual impacts from the neighbors from the roadway there. You know, a lot of those trees are pretty mature and pretty tall. Site's relatively flat. There's a good circulation around that should go in and around building A there. We have 61 parking spaces, which as Anne-Marie mentioned, you know, it's a little less than, you know, 1-to-1, but we think that most of the CRC households will, you know, some will drive, some won't. So we're probably at 1-to-1 when you consider, you know, that factor there. So these are the floor plans for the, you know, let me go back real quick because I didn't mention, look at all the green space here and the opportunity to create some outdoor recreational activities. And one of the things I want to point out is that each building here has its own patio space. So they'll have that, but we're going to be working on putting a you know, some type of central feature there for all the residents to enjoy. So floor plans of the single-story buildings, 6 studio apartments. These are apartments with a kitchen and bathroom, not SRO housing. So that, you know, each resident will have ownership of their own unit. And then you can see the community space in the center there that kind of, you know, brings the units together. It's really, you know, really nicely laid out and ample community room. And that will, that goes off to a patio space behind each one, when parking in close proximity to those units. Then we're here at building A, that's the 3-story structure. That you have on the first ground or the first floor, you have your community room, lobby amenity space, and then the red bracketed units, those are blocks of CRC households. Again, I want to point out that there's community rooms within close proximity. You know, a lot of community space here, you know, very important to the program. For folks to get out of their units and meet and talk to their neighbors. The ground floor is going to also have a mix of studios and 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms. As we start heading up to the building, we're 25 units on per floor. Again, that back wing there is going to be our CRC household units with that community room. And it just stacks up to the 3rd floor. A couple other exciting pieces to mention about the design here. This is going to be all electric, all 4 buildings. You know, we were out there on a really sunny day. I think when we did our site walk, it was probably an excellent opportunity for on-site electric generation with solar panels. And then all 3 will be designed to Passive House, and we anticipate getting them certified through FIAS, which is the Passive House certification organization. We'll be bringing on a sustainability consultant as we start moving towards design. And Passive House is something that the planning office is familiar with. Right now we're working on a Passive House building in Wayland. We're going through that FIAS review process now, so something that we're very familiar with and excited to work on. We get some visuals of the site. What you'll see there. I do want to point out that we have heard some feedback that the single-story structures look like it's from some members, and it looks like something that's getting torn down or brought down in town. So we are, our architect's going to look at that and update those designs to those single-story buildings, so they look like, something that's not coming downtown.
You didn't say anything about solar that I remember.
yes.
But go ahead.
Yes, we're anticipating solar on
They
the
look
solar
like
generation.
nice solar roofs to me.
Yeah, yes, and where it's laid out, yeah, I think we'll be able to get good solar generation. We'll also, in addition to a sustainability consultant, there's a few firms we work with that will come on once we advance the plans far along enough. And we'll have them do a solar feasibility study. I think that this is probably a good site for solar here. Street level view. The view from the back of the site over by building A. And I just want to talk about the unit mix and the rents. So we're proposing that for 33 studios and 10 one-bedrooms that are going to be rented at using MRVPs, which is a state voucher program. And those are set to the fair market rents of the area, which is released every year by HUD. And then we'll have 7 two-bedroom units that are proposed to be Section 8s. And that's set to the large area fair market rent that 110% of the large area fair market rent. Those are what we're anticipating for support. Typically in a supportive housing project like this one, even though it's an integrated campus here is how we view it. UHLC will see it as a supportive housing project since we're doing 50%. And typically they award vouchers and like a 1-to-1 per supportive housing unit. Then we're also proposing 26 units at 60% of area median income, 25 one-bedrooms, and 1 two-bedroom unit, 6% AMI for a one-person household is around $70,000. Two-person household, $80,000. That gives you an idea of what kind of job or what kind of income those folks have. As Anne Marie mentioned, thinking maybe entry-level firefighter, teachers, retail manager, etc. We're also offering 5 units of workforce housing through the Workforce Housing Program under Mass Housing. These will be affordable up to for households earning up to 80% of area median income. It's around $90,000 for a single person household, $105,000 for a 2-person household. And then there are 5 one-bedroom units, as Emery mentioned, that are going to be for CRC staff to live on site, to be there for those what if moments. So a little bit about the funding sources here and what we're going to spend it on. You're looking at a TDC just shy of $50 million. That's going to be 31 million in hard costs, about 7 million in soft costs, another 7 million in fee and project reserves, and a $5 million acquisition fee. The hard costs, we'll bring we have as part of the project team, an owner's rep who will work with us and our architect to make sure that we're designing something that's feasible and that can be built. And then as we advance the design, we'll bring a general contractor on for pre-construction services, and they'll do a price estimate before we submit our tax credit application. One of our sources here, about 20 million in tax credit equity. That's federal and state low-income housing tax credit. 10 million in capital sources from the state. And 1.2 million in, I'll call them green dollars, with a grant from the Department of Energy Resources and Matt Dave's incentives for Passive House. And then a approximate $5 million sponsor note, and then the $3.5 million request that we have before you all.
Right, did you say there was a $5 million sponsor loan?
Correct, yeah, approximately $5 million, it's about 4.8.
And is that backstopped by, is that just like a conventional real estate loan with Eastern Bank or something like that, or is that? You're on the cash equity into the project?
It would be a way for the land that CRC owns to get to the project. And without the project paying the full cost of it, it would be loaned and then paid down over a certain number of time.
Or maybe never.
So
Or
it's
refinance.
it's effectively the acquisition cost. That's almost, that's a soft loan to the project.
Correct. To just go over some of the timeline and our funding sources, where our goal for this year is to get into the 2026 winter funding round. That's the NOFA for that is typically released in late October. Seems like it's November these days. And to be competitive, the state typically wants to see a funding commitment from the municipality. And they'd like to see that you're either, you've already been approved for your zoning, or that you're about to be approved for your zoning. So that's what we're working towards now. And we typically awarded funds, the next summer or even later for those funding announcements. After we're awarded funds, that's when we would, apply to we're right now contemplating Mass Housing as our lender. That would be a construction to perm loan with the workforce housing funds. Later this year, we're anticipating another, round of the DOER grant to be available. And that application was due this year in early January, so anticipate the same timeline for that. What was exciting this year is that they had funds for new construction, and seems like that's something that they'll continue. In this project with solar generation and there'll be electric vehicle charging will be a good candidate for that grant. And then Mass Saves will come into play. We'll register the project now, work with our sustainability consultant through the steps and through the FIAS design review. And then once it's under construction and close to completion, that's when we'll do the what's called a blower door test to make sure that we've built it to passive house, and then we'll receive our certification. And then the incentive funds from Mass Saves will come into the project. Our key milestones for the project here is, from now until the summer, we're going to be working on our, fleshing out our design, incorporating town and feedback, incorporating stakeholder feedback. On that front, we've had a meeting several weeks ago with the town manager's office and some members of the select board to talk about the permitting path of a friendly 40B, which they were receptive with. We've used the friendly 40B or collaborative approach in several other communities. Wayland's a very recent example where we did a lot of upfront work with the town, so that way on the back end when we're at the zoning board, it's fewer meetings, which is really probably for everybody. So we're right now, last week we had a meeting with the planning department. And we're figuring out our next steps to get some plans, our plans together to get feedback from department heads and then go through their design review process before we go ahead and submit what's called a project eligibility letter application to the state before we can go before the zoning board. So that's going to, from now till the summer. We anticipate, probably if we're in February now, so we'll probably have our project eligibility application letter application into the state in early summer. That's about 45, 60 days to get that out, and then we can apply end of the summer. And then hopefully 4 months after that, we'll have a vote. That's been our experience with Wayland and some other towns that we've used the friendly 40B. And then, as I mentioned, this is all geared towards that one-stop
I'm sorry,
application.
when you said 3 to 4 months.
Yep.
I lost track of where you were in.
Oh, so we were,
On the Gantt chart or whatever. that
sure
you were- You had in your head there.
yep, we'll go to the ZBA in August, 3 months from that, we would, hopefully we'll have a favorable decision in time to apply for the, to submit our pre-application to EOHLC, so that would put us in October, November.
And you won't be in time for the permanent supportive housing round, is that right? Is that what you're doing?
We're doing the winter round, not the supportive housing round. So we'll be in the full winter round next year, which is when the applications are due for this year in February, so I imagine they would be the same cycle. Other questions on the timeline? Yeah. So anticipate a fund, successful application, because I'm not gonna be a pessimist, summer of next year. And then, that's when we'll start doing the work to really get this to a close, which will involve bringing on a general contractor, finalizing plans, applying, going through the commitment process with Mass Housing for the construction of perm loan and workforce housing. And then hopefully get to a close first quarter of 2027. Approximately 15 months later, we'll have a general contractor prove that out. We'll be welcoming folks in second quarter of 28.
Do you remember, if I may, how many rounds do you find that your projects typically need at HLC?
So typically, if you have your zoning and your local commitment, that's a really good spot to be in. And a project like this, who's to say what they'll think when they're actually reviewing it. But a project like this that's unique and has their early support, that's a pretty good sign. If we were not to be funded with that round, there's a mini round that we've had good success in. I think we put in a project in Brockton in a mini round and got funded last year. And then we have one that was pending funding this year, pending an award this year. So we're, if it's not funded the first go, there's that mini round that they release for projects that are highly ready to proceed is the word they use, and we anticipate getting this highly ready to succeed by the beginning of next year.
One of the things I will say that I think is working in the project's favor to be on that faster timeline is that there was introduced in the economic development bill that was signed by Governor Healy last year, included funding for this project as a pilot program. So it specifically called out this development for an allocation of both capital resources as well as operating subsidies that Phil mentioned through the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. So we're cautiously optimistic that between the commitment that's been shown in the economic development bill, which is very unique, the nature of the housing, as well as hopefully getting all these other pieces lined up, that will be well positioned to be successful in that first round. But to your point, there's a lot of applications, there's a lot of demand, and the project in Wayland that we had wasn't funded in the first round, but it was funded in the mini round, the following one. So can't predict what's going to happen. What we're obviously, we think we're in a strong position here to, given the nature of the project and all of the supports, to be successful.
Bill, just to be clear what you said about the Affordable Homes Act, there's a specific earmark in there for this project, or it's just part of what? Just say again what you just
Yeah, it's
said.
actually not in the Affordable Homes Act, it's in the Economic Development Bill.
Okay.
that was signed, I wanna say it was after, it was maybe October, November, it was
Yes, I
after the
know,
end
yeah.
of end of the session, so. In the economic development bill, there was a specific pilot program language and authorization for Charles River for, I believe it was $5 million. Plus,
Congratulations.
plus operating support
That's great.
for this integrated development, so that was specific in there.
Another Denise Garlic.
And that was a big thanks to Rep Garlic.
Yes,
who
I
was-
just thought yeah,
Who was instrumental
I
in
did not
getting
know
that,
that,
yeah,
but that's-
getting that included, so yes.
she did that for us as well, so that is.
Yeah.
Increases. Despite our new representative being here tonight, increases our, sorrow for her not. To not be here to see this happening here.
Yeah, but obviously we're grateful for that, and again, it's consistent with also the priorities at UHLC around this type of supportive housing.
No, it's a very good sign. I didn't know about that, but. Rep Garlic doesn't necessarily brag about things, does she?
So if there's no other questions on timeline, I'm gonna pass it over to Hillary to talk about the communication and outreach that us CRC has been doing. I can't say we and take credit. for it.
That's okay. Thank you. So as Anne Marie kind of spoke about earlier, that over the course, basically since 2022, we've been working with our stakeholders to really determine how we're going to develop this. And in those conversations, we have been able to really focus on making sure our communication talks about the affordable housing and integrated support services, the proposed design and the funding strategies in order for us to be able to do this project. And as Anne Marie had indicated, we have met with several key professionals throughout this, including our town officials, state legislators, DDS funding sources, and disability advocates. And as you know, the feedback has been very positive for the organization. We also are finding that we want to further our transparency and engagement by offering opportunities for the community to be able to learn more about the program. And some of those things have included one-on-one meetings with our stakeholders. We've done some community meetings. And now that the project has been solidified at this point, we're going to continue to provide those opportunities, whether it's at Charles River, whether it's one-on-one, if it is a community gathering, it's opportunities like this. We are also going to be establishing a dedicated web page on the Charles River website that will include information about the project as well as timelines, frequently asked questions, as well as the opportunity for community members to be able to make any type of inquiry directly to the Charles River Center with regards to the project. And that the goal of that page will be live actually next month. We are in developing it right now. So that will be the place that we'll be directing people to get the most current information about where the project is. We'll also continue to utilize our social media and our current other modes of communication. We have a listserv of over 6,000 subscribers, as well as early on, we did mail out to over 200 residents, just basic correspondence about the project, and we'll continue to do that as well. And our neighbors, as we all know, just some of the demographics of our neighbors, or excuse me, the locations, we're looking at our neighbors on Dwight Road. We're looking at our neighbors and communicate with our neighbors on Central Avenue, basically between the Hoyden and Great Plain Avenue, Sunrise Terrace. And then also, many may or may not know, but North Hill Avenue, which is actually on the back side of this property, those are the neighbors as well that we have consistent communication with as well, to make sure that they are well informed of what the project is and where we are with the key aspects of it. We will also be providing opportunities for surveying and regular feedback from all of our stakeholders, whether it's in person, if it's a digital suggestion, and online surveys. And the goal is to have as many people up to Charles River to learn more about not only the project, but really what the organization does to support individuals with disabilities. And that is our goal.
Sorry. Were there any concerns raised by your neighbors or butters or anything?
Not really. Everyone's very supportive with regards to the project. Yes, there's traffic is a yes.
Construction.
Yes, and there was also, a little bit about, drainage and rain and things along those lines. But other than those two aspects, we have a team of people that are gonna be looking at all of that to be able to address those concerns as this project goes along, for sure. But overall, most of the feedback has been very positive in terms of supporting the community and the vulnerable population that we serve. So.
We'll also be starting a capital campaign for this project. We've hired a communication consultant who's very experienced in large capital campaigns. Our target is $5 million. Mostly for the unique design of this space that our population will need. Enhancing the outdoor green space, enhancing the community center, that sort of thing. So we'll be starting that in, what's the time frame?
In about a
About a
year,
year.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that in
And
your-
they
Kick it off?
Is
anticipate-
that in your current
Yeah.
budget?
Is it in our current budget?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
So it's really for not the development of the structure, but the things inside that are unique, that they're not, it's not part of a usual design, it's specific to these. An example would be some of the assistive technology that's needed, that's very expensive, the maintenance and so on and so forth. Also, there's some unique designs when you talk about folks with autism or intellectual disabilities in terms of storage and floor drainage, nothing that they're accustomed to. So that's really in addition to, if you will. So, any questions?
It's rare to find a project so well thought through in the level and scope of integration within the community, which I think is a huge community asset
It is.
for the town and also for CRC. I can understand why there's been so much support rallied around the project. You have unique site conditions, which for traffic, I think is actually pretty well positioned. I know that, the engineers that you're working with, and I haven't gone into the, any of their plans if they have them yet for traffic mitigation and for, stormwater mitigation, but you're just so well positioned on all of that, it makes a ton of sense. The ability to be able to serve, 83 or 86, residents, or have 86 units, and to have such a diverse mix and breakdown and scope of service that you're actually able to offer in the community, I think it's great, both residents and non-residents. It's a natural extension for the CRC. And I can understand the concept of it as a model for the state, which I sometimes, I think it was for the doer application. They want to see the ability for this to be replicated. And there's so many unique features for this. I could absolutely see, how easy that answer is written on the application for the pilot to be successfully implemented across the Commonwealth. Also with this site, like, when you're mobilizing often what we find during, construction of a project of this scope is it's so difficult to move trucks in and out and gear in and out and all the equipment that comes in and out. But you're uniquely positioned to be able to contain all of that. The financing is always a trick. And I know that, I'm involved in affordable housing as well, so is Reg. So we're fairly familiar with, with those routes. And fortunately, we have Emily, our consultant for our own board, who's asked some pretty good probing questions, which we look forward to, uncovering the answers for. Look forward to hearing more about it.
Thank you.
Do you have a question? No?
Emily does.
Yes.
Oh, you're muted, Emily. You're not.
I have a quick question. No. What is your cost estimate based on? How far have you advanced?
Sure. Our cost estimate is based on recent pricing that's come in for projects that are replicable in size and scale. The two projects we base this on is that senior housing building in Wayland, where we got cost estimates back in September. And then which is our Thatcher apartment development, which is a similar multi-building campus down in Brockton. So we've based our cost estimate on that. As we advance design, we will have, we'll have our general contractor come in as a pre-con GC, and they will put it out to bid to prove that, or see where we can value engineer to get that price to where we need it to be.
So right now you have more or less a concept level design.
Correct, yeah.
Do you apply contingencies to your estimates?
Yes, we got it.
What have you seen for, escalation, cost escalation lately?
Yeah, I think when we've talked to contractors, they've been saying assuming 5%, per year, and so we're building in that contingency into our numbers as well.
Do you have to have like a project, labor agreement? Or
We do not know, that's not something as, for our office, that we have to have in place.
You have to pay prevailing wages.
We aren't assuming prevailing wages here now, given the subsidy sources, we're not assuming that we're triggering Davis-Bacon wages or anything, and we're not assuming that there are gonna be any other sources.
No filed sub bid.
No.
Okay. Lucky you, yes. Sorry.
I was gonna say that.
And we will be able to take advantage of our nonprofit status and use our sales tax exemption, which
You're
will go along, a little ways towards keeping costs down.
Emily?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why I couldn't unmute. So yeah, this sounds like a great project. I'm in the position of having to kick the tires a little bit on the financing, so Phil and I have been going back and forth on a few issues. There's one thing from your presentation that confused me, Phil, so help me out. On this issue about the utilities. You said on that slide, MRVP in section 8 have a fixed gross rent, utilities are paid by the owner, and contract rent is increased accordingly. But you underwrote this at the contract rents. Did you mean that the utilities are paid by the owner? Because then you would be getting the gross rents, right?
Yeah,
But you did underwrite it at the contract rents. I know we went back and forth, but I didn't get this issue until just.
I would say that, I think what I had put in the emails were correct, and this was just an oversight on the slides.
So, okay, but it's underwritten at the contract rent, but then that's not consistent with the idea that utilities will be paid by the owner. Because then you would get the gross rent, no? The full gross, I mean, it's a difference of, 31, 41, 61 per unit, more income. But question is, have you reflected utilities on the units as a cost in your, on the cost side or not? Maybe you should look at it.
Something, we'll go back and take a look at that. I think given we have increasingly been carrying utilities on the owner side, given fluctuations and wanting to minimize impact on residents. So that's why we've moved that, corporately, we've made the decision to move that onto the owner side, but we'll go back and take a look at that and can circle back with you on the way.
Okay. So a couple of other issues that I raised with Phil that these are really arcane, so it's only for people that are into the weeds, but unfortunately that's me. So, this issue about income averaging, there's 5 units targeted to 80% AMI households that right now are excluded from tax credits in your analysis, but could potentially, in a project like this, be included through this income averaging, device that some crazy person invented. So, but it seemed like from the profile that you've got here with a lot of very low, extremely low income units, that probably you could do that. And I raise that only because it's a very valuable, I mean, the additional equity that would be raised by those 5 units, what did I figure it was quickly? Something like $856,000, a big number. So I was asking why you haven't reflected that in the pro forma so far.
Yeah, I think good question, Emily. We have used income averaging on some of our other projects. Really sort of given the nature of that really, needs to be at the, at the discretion of EOHLC in terms of their review. And so we typically do not assume that upfront because we haven't had those conversations with them. And we don't want to assume that we're getting that equity, not have that be approved by EOHLC and then have a gap in the project itself. So in this case, we have not assumed income averaging. Again, when we get to the point to have conversations with HLC, we'll raise that with them. But we don't want to be in a position where we're making an assumption, doesn't turn out to be pan out, and then we have a gap of that amount.
And you would have those conversations before you submit your application?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I was pushing back on a little, and this is confusing, about the 5 staff units. Now, are these, are the salaries of those, so those 5 staff people are not reflected on your staffing chart as salaried project employees. So are they, who are they exactly? They are staff employees of Charles River Center who during the day, what do they do during the day? They work elsewhere at jobs at Charles River, or are they at this project 24 hours?
No, they'll be working at another day job somewhere else, probably Charles River.
Okay.
Across the street, which would be lovely.
I mean, I was looking at this number. The reason I'm asking this is because there's this very large number in your development uses, which is over $2 million being carried as a reserve against the rent that these people would pay for their units to live there. So I was scratching my head and thinking about this number so big, and I thought I was raising with you, there's sort of another way to conceive of it, which is more commonly thought of as this is a concession unit. If you actually, instead of reserving against the number, the 2 million is actually their rent for all 5 of them times 12 months a year times 15 years. So it's a really, really big number. But if you thought of it as a concession unit or a concession on the rent, which is more typically done with live-in staff, you would just put in there the annual cost of the rent concession, and then that number would come down by about $400,000, something like that. So I was raising, that as what I'm looking at obviously is, I'm asking the questions, are there other sources you could plug in here? Are there ways to reduce costs around the margins? Although, these 2 numbers together add up to $1.25 million roughly, so it's pretty big. That could lower the ask to us. And I realize it's in an early stage and there's lots of other things that could increase costs. And this is the problem of applying as you have to at an early stage in order to make the application viable. But I'm just wondering about this alternative approach of thinking of them as rent concession units and calling it an operating expense.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Emily. I think we structured it this way based upon preliminary conversations we had with potential lender and investors as we were doing the initial underwriting. But I think when we get to the point of, I think as Phil had mentioned, we will be going through a formal RFP process to select a lender and investor. And I think when we get to that point in time, we'll be able to further refine, is there an alternate approach that our lender and investor are comfortable with? And that may be one that, that we can pursue. But again, this was just based on the preliminary feedback that we had, as our lender and investor were underwriting it to sort of and giving us preliminary feedback at this stage. But, I think that's certainly an approach that we can be looking at and exploring as we advance. To your point, we're not at that stage with having those detailed conversations with those parties at this point. So, we based it upon those initial conversations, but certainly that is an approach that we can be looking at.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question for Anne Marie, I think. I didn't remember reading it in the application, so forgive me if I missed it, or, those supplemental materials, but really caught my attention when you said that you introduced the pilot program dimension of this, not just because of the money that was in the economic development bill, but you said something along the lines of this would be the first program of this kind, which has been a dream for a very long time, actually. I happen to know that. In Massachusetts, were you saying that, or nationwide? I
No,
mean,
well,
I'm
so-
just curious.
So
Is
Massachusetts,
this the nationwide first?
I mean, it's a good question. I think I'd have to do a little bit more research to make sure that there isn't, but I could tell you that we spoke to the Massachusetts experts. And we've also looked at Denmark models. So the little houses in the front are designed after a Denmark model. Folks with autism living in supportive housing, where they can live, it's called together and apart. So they have their own apartments where they're apart and they can enjoy, living separately, but there's a common area within each of those. So it's sort of, come out for a family dinner, or come out, so draw them out of their rooms for a reason. So we looked at Denmark. We've also talked to other organizations across Massachusetts who did something like this, but the ones that we talked to were started by parents who wanted a group home for their son or daughter, and then thought of other things to go along with it.
No,
This is really targeted for that gap
I
need.
was,
It's
that
very-
I know about, and that I was actually asking about the larger building. If you want to put the slide up or something, maybe it would make more sense.
So the
Where you-
integration percentage
that-
is tremendous.
Yes.
And that was
Is
very
that's the
key.
first, right?
Yes, it is.
I
It
mean,
was key.
And,
Slide now.
There,
it's this one, like this building, any one of the floors.
yeah,
of
the
that
big,
building.
the building.
Yeah,
So there's another organization in town who just built something or is about to build something like this. And it is not integrated. It's a campus with only disabled people there. And, we, first of all, we don't like to call it a campus. We like to call it a community, right? Because that's what we hope to make it. We hope to have it, a walking path around it, some common areas that will draw the community to us and draw people into the community. And I think the level of integration is what stands, sets it apart.
no,
honestly.
it's amazing. But I'm asking also just because, how to put this question carefully. As the first time, that's done, one of the things is just the being able to attract the right mix of residents that are both abled and disabled. Because it's not any old kind of, unfortunately, we live in a world where there's not any old kind of abled person would do, might either be attracted to those units or do well in those units and so forth. And has that been studied or looked at or anything?
Yes, and
This being the
autism-
first, yes.
Autism Housing Pathways has
Yeah.
looked at that, and they've really done a lot of work. If you check out their website, they've done a lot of work in this area. They talk to self-advocates who are able to live independently with wraparound support
Mhm.
services. What do you want? What do you need?
Mm.
What do you like, what you don't like? And there's also been developments, the Mill House, where is that? Waltham? where it's integrated with elderly, and there's been some problems with the elderly population. So specifically in elderly development, living with people with disabilities who are not elderly. The thing that's
And
going in
we're
our
somewhat
favor,
challenged that way ourselves.
Yeah.
In our buildings here.
something that's going in our favor, I think, you know, we will have to have a whole team that looks at each individual who wants to live here, and they have to meet a criteria. Well, one, they can't need more than 30 hours of intermittent staff support during the week. And so that's for the people we serve. So that really, those folks are skilled. Those folks have some social skills. Those folks have less behavioral challenges necessarily, that sort of thing. So that's going in our favor. It's not like putting a group home here and saying, deal with it. Where they have a lot of support needs. And sometimes it's a problem in the general community, right? There will be challenges for sure. And I think early on, there might be some challenges, but we really are trying to be thoughtful and talk to, now that we have a design, let's go out and talk to people who tried it. Let's go across the nation and talk to other people, other states who do Arizona. I want to go to Arizona, talk to them. They're very.
This is the time of year.
I have an uncle there, he'd love it. Very, you know, in the forefront of this sort of thing, and we really want to talk to them. So well, there'll be challenges, no doubt. I don't have to tell you that. Yeah, there'll be challenges. But I think also people living here, they'll know it's an integrated community from the community side, right? So we'll have to do some outreach on that and some education, and we're really hoping that they support naturally. Natural supports is the goal, right? Where the community and neighborhood supports a person with disabilities. Oh, you lost? Let me help you. Oh, you don't know how to cook a chicken? Let me help you.
Yeah.
You know, that's the goal. And that's really, you know, I think that we'll be able to pull it off. Okay, there'll be problems, but nothing we haven't seen before.
We are in the process now, which is pretty early on, of identifying a property manager and finding the right property manager for this property is very important. So we're going to be doing an interview process with the CRC steering committee to make sure that we're hiring the right one for this unique property.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have just one question, or 1.5 maybe. Am I right? I wrote it down. I wasn't sure when you were showing the different buildings, and then when you got to the main building, building A, is that where all Charles River clients would be housed, or are they throughout the buildings, throughout the campus?
They are throughout, so they'll be
They
in,
are,
they'll
okay.
be in those.
It's color coded.
That doesn't work.
It's shaded here.
Oh, okay.
So if you look at the shaded, yeah.
Go ahead. So in the single story buildings, those
Yeah.
will be Charles River Center units.
Sorry, I'll get you back here. Do you have control of it?
I have control. These single story structures that are at the
Okay.
front here, these will be Charles River Center studio units. Those will be six units each.
Okay.
And then moving to the larger building in the 3-story building, in the. Oh, it does? Okay. So right here, oh, this is
Okay.
great, future now.
Mhm.
These are going to be blocks of Charles River Center, units, and these will stack through floors through 3. So as we move up, there'll be another block of Charles River Center units.
Okay.
And on the third floor, there's one more down below there.
Okay.
So integrated throughout.
Right, okay, wasn't clear. Great. And also I was glad, it's not a question, but really a comment. I was just glad to hear you talk about reaching out about the transportation. That was a concern. I thought it's a great piece of land, but it is tucked away and it's not walking distance to either the Heights or the center. And I thought, how do you do that? Because most of these clients are not gonna be able to not driving. And so that's good to hear that you have actually thought about
Get a
that.
lot of business.
That's right down the hill.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you very much.
One more thing, we can get a copy of the presentation emailed
Yes,
to us.
I think-
I sent that out.
Yeah, you already
All
sent
right, I
that
didn't
out.
see that, I'm sorry.
That's
And then the other, that Wayland project that you recently did, I would welcome more information about that.
Sure.
Because it sounds like you're using that as a proxy or model, at this conceptual design stage for a lot of the assumptions you're making. Is that
So
right?
on the development side, so that's 100% affordable senior housing, so it's a
Mhm.
different population, obviously, that's being served, but in terms of certainly on the cost side. And the design side, sort of similar type of.
Well, and
building.
also on the comprehensive permitting
yes, yeah.
timeframe side.
Yeah, we're
you're-
happy
you're-
to share with you, sort of, again, the
Yeah.
process we went through with Wayland in terms of working through with the town. Prior to submitting our project eligibility application to the EOHLC, and then the timeframe from then to the ZBA, again, following that same type of.
Because I was trying to figure that out from, there's a many page, very glossy, very slick brochure
Sure.
on your, there, but I couldn't figure out which were the sort of comparable projects. that you
Yeah,
did
we're
before.
happy to, what we can do, we'll go back to Wayland, we'll just sort of outline the timeframes that we went through on that, and again.
Or any other projects.
Sure, yeah, I think that's probably the most recent one, it's local, I think that's a good example to. for us to
Similar community,
describe
yeah,
to you.
right.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank
Very nice presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Very good.
That's right. So I thought we shouldn't.
It's very easy.
Jewish. I'm not allowed.
Oh, yeah, we did. Okay.
Right. Good point. Yeah. So we're.
Shall I close the meeting for just a moment?
That's right.
I'm not using.
No, exactly, that's right.
Sorry. No, we were done with that.
Yeah, I just want to introduce Josh Tarski as our new state rep.
Hi, everybody. I feel like I know a lot of you. It's nice to be here. Yeah. I figured I would drop by, just trying to get a flavor of what's going on in town. I work with Reg on a bunch of mostly the Linden Chambers project. Helping out with that, and I met with them, with Denise, I think 2 weeks ago. To get a sense of what they're trying to do there. With the housing and some of the, the units that are being built there. Pretty exciting stuff, I think. You would all agree with
Great
that.
project.
Yeah, really is cutting edge.
You're a great community partner too. CRC does such wonderful work for the town.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you can find a better fitting group to take something like this on, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting to see.
yeah. So I just thought I would come and watch. Oh, really?
I don't get that many visitors.
We
Yeah.
don't, we really don't. so.
We won't always put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
By now.
I think it's happening more and more. I'm getting used to it.
We could
Yeah.
discuss how the dwindling state match for the community preservation funding. In other words, we have our 2% surcharge that we all of us pay every year for, which we used to get 100% match from the state in the early days before many communities signed up. And that's dwindled down this year to 18%. So we're, because of the way that, it's the same pot of money being split more ways here.
Also, the pot is
And yes,
decreasing because it's based on real estate act.
well, and more, but the more communities, largely more communities. So I think it would be super great. Since we have you, here, to just say, there's just been an enormous amount of good that's been done by this Community Preservation Act
Yes.
for so many projects in town. Many of us know many of them, but a lot of people don't know some of them that, would never, we'd never be able to find in this town. And that's true across the entire Commonwealth. So if opportunities present themselves to rally your other colleagues and just your new colleagues around, beefing up that state match, that would be great. We're kind of in a funding pickle this time round, actually.
Yeah.
That if we think about it, we have two great community housing projects this year and not enough funding to do it. But if we were still funded at even 75% or something like that, we would be having a different conversation this cycle than we are now. So
Let me follow up, and it's just been
You
steadily
just-
going down as
it's-
enrollment with other communities have gotten into this, that's the main
yeah,
driver.
well, just be on the lookout. Yes, those communities that have adopted the CPA, that's true. The communities that haven't adopted it, of course, probably are politically not in favor of doing anything, but
I'll keep an eye on it and let me see what I can do, all right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Yes.
Anything else? You got me. there.
I-
Oh, you're gonna like stump the truck there for me.
no, I wasn't gonna do that.
That's what most of our meetings look like.
Yeah. so.
But I think the need for community housing, I mean, for housing
Well, think
development in
about the map.
Massachusetts is what
Yeah,
we're
the
trying to do,
Yeah,
so.
and think about that.
Are you guys gonna be able to fund both? I was gonna ask you that in private.
No, it's a challenge.
It is gonna be a challenge between
Yeah.
the Linden Chambers and
Yeah.
this one as
I
well.
mean,
Yeah.
they're not great options.
We got-
There are some options.
Yeah, we got some.
We did fund $5.5 million to the Linden Chambers project last cycle. What's in front of us this cycle is the Seabeds Way and Captain Robert Cook Drive.
For your subsequent project.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it's
From the NHS.
it's dependent. They have to be both done in order to either one of them to go forward. So that's the challenge. So. Sorry to bushwhack you, but.
No.
It is an opportunity to lobby for more CPA funding, and I think we're all in favor of that.
Yeah. Does it make a difference if you go from 2 to 3%, or is that? I think-
We as a town can elect to go from 2 to 3%, but I think that would be a very heavy lift to get the Needham taxpayers to agree to that. So even though that's a theoretical option, no, it's the other match. So you got the
State money.
2% match. And in the first year, it was matched dollar for dollar. So if you raised,
3 million.
in our case, we raising about $3.5 million this year. Then we get a $3.5 million match from the state, so we'd have $7 million. Instead, we're only getting, a much smaller amount.
Noted. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for visiting, Josh.
No, it's my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for coming by.
Him looks good on you.
Oh, yes.
That's right. Well, I don't think you ever get off, John. That's not how it works. That's right.
24/7.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you again, Josh.
Bye.
No.
All right, so let's move on here.
I was thinking about it.
Emily, do you have any comments you'd like to make to the committee? From our presentation, and conversely, does anybody here have any questions for Emily?
I mean, I'll just say, it sounds like a really great project. I do feel like there's some areas that haven't been fully explored, the ones that I mentioned. And it's tough, because I also know that 6 months from now, their costs are gonna be higher and they're gonna need more money, and their ask to us has already passed, I suppose they can come back if they wanna be in this round. So, but I mean, I feel like the things I raised, developers have different approaches to this. Some of them, you have to make a judgment about what thing do you think is likely to fly with HLC, and then, if it's pretty likely to fly because it's in the regs and it's an available tool, then normally you would put it in. So, I mean, I think like the 580% units, I'm really not sure why that's not in here. It's the thing with the rents that I was raising him tonight, that's a new one. I don't know what their response will be to that. Because if they're underwriting at contract rents, but they're really getting gross rents, higher rents, then that's also additional income that could support more debt, unless they haven't put in the corresponding operating expense, which, you know, we'll see what they say. And on the staff units, I mean, that's just a weird situation. Again, I would have done it another way that would be less costly, maybe not as good for the developer, because if they have an escrow in there or reserve, the developer will get it back at the end of the day if it's not used. If they underwrite it as an operating expense, it's a cost to the project, but cheaper to the funders like you. So it's a long way of saying there's, you know, there's maybe ways that their budget could be cut if it had to be, without tanking the project. On the other hand, we know that they're gonna have higher costs later on, so they'd be able to use the money if you fully fund it, and it's a great project. So, you know,
Okay.
how do you balance that?
What if, assuming there was no cost escalation for a moment, what would, I'm curious if I was fascinated by your discussion and question of the 5 staff units and how they're treated. And it's a mechanism to reduce the total development cost that I hadn't really come across before. So forgive me, but I'm learning in the process. And I wonder if we did that, what's the proportional reduction in the ask to us? Like, would it go from, was it 5 something?
It's 3.5.
3.5.
It's 400, just that one thing with the staff units, it's about $400,000.
But is that a reduction in the total ask to the CPC of 400?
Yeah,
Or
because, well, it actually would be a little more, they'd have to run it. Because what they would be, you know, no longer having that $2 million reserve, but they would be able to carry less debt. So I've run it and I can show it to you. But what I couldn't do, there's also like ripple effects. If you have less debt, you have less financing fees. And I don't have enough information to run that. But so just in a crude way, you're balancing, you know, the removal of that $2 million cost, but on the other hand, less supportable debt, and the net between them, it's a gain of $400,000 roughly. So that's, you know, something small. The other one, which frankly is to me a more certainty, the 5 income averaging units. I mean, as far as I know, HLC it does this fairly routinely if a developer wants to do it, and that's 800 and something thousand, 856,000 gain in equity. The thing that I asked about the gross rents, I don't know, because he's got to get back to us about that. That may or may not be real if they haven't put in the corresponding cost, which probably is what they'll say. So I don't know about that, but you know. So those are 2. If you add them together, you get $1.25 million. To me, the equity is a more reliable one. Just, I mean, I don't know, because they say they haven't talked to the investors, and you know, I guess I would think of, well, could an investor say these really aren't they're not concession units because the person, well, they are though, they really are concession. I mean, this is what you do if you had a live-in janitor in your project, right, and you're not charging them rent, giving them a rent-free apartment, you put it in as a concession. It's very common. So I don't know.
I think these are, I mean, that's a significant reduction in the ask by
400,000. The 400,000 plus.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, at a time when we are, you know, we have two equally worthwhile projects. And not enough funding directly to be able to award the full ask to both. I think it's prudent on the one hand to, to push for that as much as we can.
I agree.
Can I ask just a point of information question to both of you? Who I was trying to understand what you were saying. So are you saying that there are 5 staff apartments that right now they're modeling that staff, paying rent for those units, and that, and then it runs through the model way Emily just described. And that another way of possibly doing it, if I heard it right, I'm just trying to repeat it back just to see if I heard it right, is that rather than paying that staff member, $60,000 a year, if that's under the 60%, and then they turn around and pay it back in rent, you can have that staff member live there rent-free, and pay him or her, I'm just making this number up, $40,000 a year. But of course, from a taxable income point of view, you're providing the value of the apartment. So you'd still, your W-2 would just show somehow, that you're getting $60,000 worth of value, and you'd be taxed the way you ought to, because it isn't free, you're being provided a benefit. It's like having a company car, for example, and using it for personal use, or maybe even not, but then you wind up lowering the amount that you have to carry in the model for that. And then that frees up more cash flow to increase the amount of debt you can carry by $1.2 million.
So I'm gonna
Is
ask,
that what you said?
I'm gonna answer your question.
Yeah.
By asking him a question. Which is,
Yeah, I'm not sure that's exactly right, but go ahead.
Okay.
because I think part of that is the way that Reg just explained that would suggest that this, the Charles River Center is bestowing an economic value of another $20,000, which is, although is not a salary, I think may still be subject to income tax.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So for the resident. And then
I'm talking about the staff member, though.
Yes, that's what he
Yeah,
did for the.
yeah.
Staff resident.
That's right, for the
Yeah,
staff
not,
resident.
not the client resident. Yeah.
But I think that, what we're looking at it is. It's less income. Another way to look at it, it's more expense to the project. So the net operating income is lower. So the multiple that's
Yes.
used for permanent debt is smaller. So they
Yes.
can't borrow as much.
Yes.
Is that right?
I couldn't quite follow it. Let me try to say it how I see it. What they're doing now is they are escrowing into a reserve the entire amount of the rent. The idea is these employees who are working somewhere else during the day, they're working across the street at the center, but they're sleeping and living in this development, and they are going to pay rent out of their pockets. That's the current model. But because of investors, risk aversion, but they haven't really talked this through, there has to be an escrow in case they don't pay the rent for the entire rent amount for all 5 of those people, 12 months a year for 15 years, which is over $2 million. And the alternative way of doing it is to say, don't have them pay rent. The rent will be a concession of the project. So the project will carry as an operating expense 1 year's worth of rent for 5 people, not 20 years, but 1 year.
Right.
That reduces the cash flow because now we've just added a new operating expense that we didn't have before. It takes away the 2 million use, but it reduces the cash flow on the operating side. So there'll be less debt. So that's the negative. You have a reduction in debt because of the higher expense. But the offset, it's still $400,000 better. Plus the mortgage fees that are the financing fees that'll be lower that I can't compute. At least $400,000 better to do it that way. Now, the impact on the resident. So I guess before they were paying rent. Now, isn't it better instead of actually paying this rent? Their salaries, this is what was confusing me. Their salaries are not getting reflected in this project budget because they're not working, for this project during the day. They have other jobs, and she said they were most likely they were going to be CRC employees. So their salaries over here, but over here, they're either paying rent or getting free rent, and there might be a tax benefit to a tax cost to that, but still better than paying the rent out of your pocket, right? So
Yeah, but that would be impacting the employee, not necessarily the project.
yeah,
Well, I think it would impact the project though.
No, it'll impact the project, but I think what Emily was talking about, the tax.
the tax side, I think that the resident employee is better off getting it. Yeah,
We don't care about.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, 400,000 is not a big number for them to absorb. If I don't know if it's enough to make a difference in terms of your constraints on funding. Like I said, the other one, the 5 units, 80% AMI is a bigger savings.
I think we should push them
I
to do
agree.
some calcs on both those issues.
Yeah.
Because
See
it's,
about the gross rents as well, what they
We
come
need
back with.
no.
Emily, could you, I know you've already asked the question, but in terms of just putting it forth as we want you to actually run these numbers and come back to us with a definitive answer.
Yeah.
Could you kind of put that question together for us? Because I'm not sure I can.
Well, here's the problem. I mean, I think we have to separate these. The gross rent versus contract rent, they have to do that because they haven't. On the other ones, what they're saying to us is not, I mean, we can ask them to run the numbers, but their response is not that the numbers I'm saying are wrong. It's that on the equity, they don't know whether this is viable because they haven't talked to HLC about it. And they're not going to do that till later. And the same thing with the concession. They haven't talked to their investors about it. They don't have an investor yet. They're giving the response that it's too early to take these leaps. And that's a judgment call, So yes, we can ask them to run the numbers, but that's not going to answer the question of whether they feel comfortable doing it. But maybe,
Yeah, but
Did I hear you say, Emily, in one of your answers to us that concession units are accepted by the EOH?
HLC.
yeah, I mean, concession units are a standard approach that any developer who has resident staff uses. What's a little peculiar about this situation is that they're not usually it's a person getting a salary, like a maintenance guy, right? He's getting a salary and they give him free rent, so he gets a lower salary, and then they take the rent as a concession. So these people are not on the books of this project as employees exactly. So that's I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that makes it unusual. And maybe there's some rule somewhere that says, you can't take a concession for a person who's not getting a salary out of the project. So they're calling them project staff. They're getting
On call or something?
Exactly. So the consideration
at night.
The consideration is for their work, for their work on hours while being there, whether it's an 8 o'clock call or a 2 a.m. call. in exchange for being on call and providing those services at those hours, instead of getting a salary, they get an apartment.
But what I hear Emily saying is this, yes, but they're getting a salary not from the LLC entity that is part of the whole tax credit deal. They're getting a salary from CRC across the street, working in one of
As a
the group
separate
homes.
entity,
Is that, and maybe that will cause a problem.
That seems to
I,
be the link.
I actually, it actually seems like it's divorced.
I don't know.
Like,
Well,
if-
we
but we
can't, we can't
that's-
figure this
Let's
out.
have the
that's not-
experts
that's
look
I
not-
think
into
all
it,
we can
yeah.
do, all we can do is ask them. to
Yeah, exactly.
Run some more numbers and, give them the indication that we're interested in lowering their requests.
I mean, I think on this point, well, I don't know, I was gonna say, what I would do if I were the developer in the situation, I would ask my lawyer. Will this fly as a concession unit, or is it some, is there some rule somewhere that defines a concession unit that this isn't? And, I mean, in other words, if there's some real obstacle to doing it, as opposed to they just haven't talked to HLC, or they're, in this case, the investors, it would be their investors, that's a different argument. But we could ask them, I don't have to think about it, I'm afraid, we can ask them to run numbers, we can certainly do that. And whether, there are any obstacles that they are aware of, other than that they simply haven't raised it yet with investors, that they think would make this not a feasible approach. We can ask them that.
Yeah, I think that's
That's
a
pretty,
good place to start.
yeah. That's a good direction to pursue.
All right, anything else?
Can I just say, I'd sort of like to wait till I get the response back on the gross rents, contract rents, and then just sort of ask them all three at once, because, I mean, I guess, just because that one might also pop up, it might also be an economic issue where there'd be savings to us. Or if you think it would be better, we can just ask on these two for now and wait to get back the rest. You want to do it that way?
Yeah, sooner the better.
Yeah,
Time
that was
is,
my next question. Is what's our timeline for decisions?
well, let's just finish with Emily, if there's any more, questions for Emily, or anything else you want to say, Emily, at this point?
I guess I'll just ask, I think what she said, and just to sum it up, which is, Emily, besides what we have talked about, I mean, when you look at this stage of the conceptual stage of this project, and the sources and uses and the OpEx that we had, and it looks, as solid as it would be at this stage, recognizing there are a lot of assumptions, a lot of, things that are gonna move around, but then there's nothing, looks good to you, is what I'm just.
Yeah, except for these things,
Except for these.
talked about. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, but these are, they're big things. It's not the project itself. It's just, there are ways that it could be, more cost effective.
Yeah, there are other sources of funds that are assumptions that are very general right now, and there's other assumptions on the expense, the uses of funds for, the project and the OpEx, but those are all well within sort of what it is normal at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, let's move on, in terms of, our other projects, and anybody.
Do you want Emily to stay with us?
Do you
or
want me
not?
to stay?
Oh, well, let me jump ahead, because I was gonna just give an update about, we were talking about alternative funding last time. Actually, we've been talking about it for like 6 weeks now, and, it's clear to me that, there's not enough money to fund these projects, both of these projects, to what the ask are. There's not enough money, even if we look at like a phased project. at Seabed's Court and doing. You know.
Well, can I just ask something? Isn't there enough if we're just doing seabeds and this project? Cause I thought, you know, that number was like in the 6 million range.
There's not enough money. Well, if we take, you know, 3.5 million for this project and 3 million or 3 million and change for just doing a phase.
Yeah.
There's not enough.
Well, we also have other applications besides the housing.
No, I just did a back of the envelope
Yeah.
estimate before I came to this meeting, you know, and I'll tell you the numbers is,
But I thought we have something like 6.5 million, isn't that right?
We have-
From what you were saying last time? So between, if it were just these two, I wasn't aware you have other ones.
we have $5 million roughly that would be available for housing.
We have 6.5.
6.5.
But Cecilia is recommending that we hold back 1.2 million. I believe,
Well, what, I'll have to.
She is?
yeah, for, not to take it all the way down to zero is what the memo said, I think.
Yeah,
She's suggesting that we don't completely empty the general reserve,
Yes.
but she was not suggesting that we don't use any of the general reserve.
No,
Yeah, she was gonna make a recommendation, but.
Right.
And what's the amount of general reserve? Is that the 1.2?
interrupting Dave.
Yeah.
Let's let Dave
Yeah.
say his thing first.
Yeah, exactly. With the two, if we allocated 3 million for Seabed's Cove and 3.5 million for Charles River, that's 6.5 million. And my calculation is we had 5 million available. Now we can
Right.
compare notes and we'll do that again. So if the closest possibility would be the phase project. Okay. The town has received our, you know, input as far as our wanting them to, you know, consider bonding. We had a meeting with Dave Davidson. He said that he was looking for some additional information. I don't think we've given him the additional information.
We're pulling together.
Okay, although hopefully that won't be a hurdle. We have requested a meeting, like a chairs meeting with the select board, and they've agreed to that. And that meeting is on the 20th. Oh, February, so that's coming. So the feedback that one could get from listening to other committee hearings is that the town doesn't seem to be too enthusiastic about the bonding. Just as recently as last night, there's a select board meeting.
So let's go on the basis that the bond is not really it's not gonna be a viable path.
So we still want to make an argument.
I'm not saying.
To that,
don't
so
do that.
let me just finish, and to that degree, anybody on this committee has, you know, willing to put together some points, talking points with regard to the bonding. I know Reg has already, through his people, put together a nice memo and all that, but, you know, I would welcome any input with regard to making an argument to the select board that bonding is, you know, an approach that makes sense. Appreciate that. I know that the select board and the finance committee, they got all their arguments about, well, the town may not be able to afford it with all the other bonding, you know, that gets complicated. That's way beyond anything that we can opine on.
Right. But we can certainly advocate for our position as a board.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what I want to do with this meeting.
So I do want to get a little more clarity though on, and we'll do that. But it may also be prudent to just set that bond issue aside for a minute. And if we could, I would like to put up that,
Okay.
you know, that memo from Cecilia. so we can just all get clarity and resolve what the estimate is on the funding.
I will share it. Emily, just give me 1 minute to pull it up.
Because I remember there was also some discussion about pulling from future years. We could potentially pull a bit from future
Well-
years.
I think Reg brought that up. I think that, we're already assuming that we have like 6.5 million or whatever, we're already pulling from, what we would have used next year.
Next year.
But then there'll be more money next year, so it's almost like, we have been operating like a year behind,
Right.
okay? But you know, the question of whether the committee can, commit funds that haven't been received yet
Right.
in a future year was brought up. And I don't know if Reg, that you guys have,
So, it's one of those uncertainty things. In the following sense that I don't think you can irrevocably commit next year's funding stream this year. I mean, when I say you, I mean, we, the CPC acting as a whole. What you can do, as I understand it, is you can make a strong statement of intent, but it isn't the same as money in the bank. It's not something in other words, that the town meeting approves. Once the town meeting approves it, then you can take it to the next step. So you can take this very, we can all sign it, a very strong statement, write it just in the right legalese. And then you can take it to the application process where you are looking for the other 75% of your funding. And they look at this and said, well, what if they change their mind next year? What if, the whole committee changes out and a bunch of new people come in and decide they don't want to do it? It only becomes,
I can
solid enough when town meeting approves it.
I can assuage that.
Yeah,
The issue is the impact with town meeting. 'Cause we can have an ironclad commitment on a future, on up to 12 months.
mhm,
And that binds a future board, so if I'm gone or Betsy's gone. If the board is still committed to the prior decisions, that can be ironclad,
Right.
at 72. It's just a function of whether or not town meeting, I think, votes it. But that can be excluded
Mm.
from a letter of support to both projects.
Yeah.
In other words, the funders don't need to, deal with the minutia of town meeting's approval. They just want to see that there's effectively a commitment letter
mhm.
to each project, so that part doesn't bother me.
Well, like I said, I would, it's not, I'm not disagreeing with what you said here,
So we're saying that the total need for both projects is $9 million, is that right?
no,
No, it's because we're really only talking about phase one, about seabeds. I think we got that. I mean, ideally, but in terms of meeting the need for Linden, it's just seabeds, because Linden is only doing phase 1A.
Sorry.
But from last week, we're down to the 3 million plus CRC.
Let's go back. It's 3.5 million for Charles River Center. Okay, the original ask for NHA was like 5.6,
5.6.
but then it bumped up to 9.5. Okay,
9.
9.95.
9.95. Okay, so we're talking about, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 million. That's what is needed to get the projects the way they're conceived now. Reg brought up a concept at our last meeting where if we just did a phased approach and did seabeds first, that would free up enough vouchers that would enable Linden Chambers.
Yes,
And so that's where the 3 million came from. But, I don't think we made a decision about that or you know,
And- and-
discuss that in any kind
Just
of.
as a point of information, that just a progress report.
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna have today the draft of the complete response. To all the information that was requested last week by Emily and by the committee members and so forth. And it didn't show up as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, but it's real soon now, so we intend to send it out as soon as we can. The one, thing is the concept of doing phase projects was those numbers, which resulted in the $3 million for Seabed First, was come up with top down. In other words, we had a Siamese twin project, you know, coming into the end of the last month. And so they're now pulling apart the Siamese twin because, again, only certain things in seabeds are fundable by CPA, and, you know, and so forth, and the majority of it's actually over in, but we figured that out on like a top-down basis. Now we're going the bottom up within the CNA, pulling apart all the, you know how construction budget estimates are doing this, they just, you know, you need this much for concrete across the entire project, you need this much for, yeah, you know, so, we do have the data to pull apart, but it hasn't been pulled apart, so.
Let's back up to the step.
So.
So you're saying that their number may change?
It may change a little bit, yeah.
So are you also saying that you're applying in the winter round only for phase 1A? You're not applying for phase 1B?
For Linden Street, yes.
So that allows us to go from what was 5.6 to then 9 down to 3 million. So
Because we could probably, right now, we're just, that's still moving around a little bit, but it's gotta be solid by the end of February. The end of this
I
month.
understand, but that's general.
40, yes, and the answer is yes, yeah. It's all about these fair
So we're
projects.
3 million for that, and then we're 3.5 million for Militia Heights for CRC.
We're in shouting distance, is that what you're saying?
Well, I just see the next.
Yeah.
So-
So if you scroll down then, where the other.
But we were just talking about, you know, I think the calculation is we have available for housing somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.5 million.
Oh, we do,
Yeah,
okay.
okay, and, you know, we're gonna put together like a little memo to kind of simplify Cecilia's memo.
Okay.
And
That's
that'll take care of that, but I think the more important idea is, you know, this phased approach, you know, it has a lot of disadvantages, I'm sure, but the question is, you know, is that something that we want to focus on, or does NHA want to focus on that? Because if we're assuming that bonding isn't going anywhere, I mean, we're stuck, right? So, I mean, I'm just throwing this out. I don't mean to sound so frustrated, but, you know.
I think we pursue both paths, see what, you know, and exhaust them both.
Well, I know if I was, you know, in the town fathers will say, well, if you got this approach, you don't need bonding and you got, you know, why don't you do that? It's like, if it's a
We'll
viable,
pursue- I just think we pursue to the select board and to FinCom and to Dave's office, you know, the bond. We'll write up another memo, so it's not just coming from the NHA member of the board. And we'll pursue that. And then as a committee, we're looking at all kinds of alternatives. That's for us, that's for us.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to get a feel for what, you know, what the
And-
alternatives are. I mean, what do you,
Just,
you know, is this phased approach, is that a real alternative? I mean, we have.
it's a real alternative with advantages and disadvantages to the town, to NHA, to our residents and so forth, but it's a real alternative.
And it gives us the opportunity, when you go in for a phase, there's really 3 phases to Linden Chambers now, it's not just the 2.
Well, yeah,
And so what we'll end up doing is you'll come back to us for another ask for,
Chambers is,
1B.
yeah, so we may or we may not, we don't know yet. We're, you know, we got 5.5 million. I don't think we, right now, today, we're not
Right.
looking like we're need all,
Right, right, right.
all 5.5 billion for phase 1A. But we may need 60% of it, because it's more expensive. The common core, the elevators, there's 2 out of the 3 stairwells, the
I get it.
the drainage, everything is more expensive, but the point being, phase 1B, is beyond the sort of planning horizon in terms of what is needed for CPA funding right now, we don't know. And Chambers, which you also mentioned, is like 5 years into the future, so that's another universe.
May I just point out that the appropriation last year, the 5.5 million, according to the warrant article, was 5.5 million for phase 1A and 1B. I don't know that that means there could be a second.
Yeah, but there was
request.
no allocation between the
Between them,
two,
correct.
yeah. So, and then, timing, I want to make sure we get your timing question. Can I, Mr. Chair, if I may say, the timing of the decision as I see it, or these, and tell me if I'm wrong, is right now we're in deliberation mode. And our next meeting is not next week, it's the following, week after school vacation week, so what's that, it's the 26th, And then we have another meeting on March,
We have a public hearing on March.
no, we have a meeting tentatively scheduled before that. March 15th, March 8th, right, is our next one. So there are 2 more deliberation
Those are
meetings.
Saturdays.
Hmm?
March 8th and March 15th are Saturdays.
All right, sorry, what are the Wednesdays?
It was March
Well-
5th and,
12.
March
Yeah,
5th
they
and the
said.
12th, so March 5th, so we have the 26th and the 5th. For deliberation, like we're doing, more input, more talking to Emily, whatever. And having chairs meetings and talking to the FinCom, and there'll be FinCom,
is that there? Yeah.
thank you.
There is not a meeting on March 5th.
Okay,
There is a chair's consultation with the finance committee on March 5th.
all right,
We have a meeting on February 26th. We have our public hearing on March 12th and a vote on the 19th.
right.
So we really,
That's when the decision gets made, is what I'm trying to do is on the 19th. We have to have a public hearing
So the 12th.
to take in public input on this decision, among other things, bonding versus granting versus phasing, whatever, that.
You don't get, so CBEDS doesn't get the commitment letter really for the February 27th winter round application.
We're not in that round with CBEDS.
What round are you gonna go for? The
Yep.
mini-
We're not competing for tax credits for
Yeah.
CBEDS. So,
Nothing from HLC?
yes, not anything out of the winter round, no.
maybe if you're thinking about Linden, I mean, Linden is in the round, Linden phase 1, right? They will not have a commitment that releases the staircloth units by February 27th. But I don't think you were asking us for that on that timetable.
I was just trying to think through
So just,
when you need a commitment to, because. Town meeting is not until May.
Hmm.
And that's the commitment letter, right?
But they're okay with that
Yeah,
They're-
because you're
yeah.
gonna apply it at a different.
in terms of Linden.
And also in terms of CBEDS.
but just to repeat again, we're not in the winter round with CBEDS and Cook because we'd be competing with ourselves and then, that would be stupid because there's already a shortage. So, that's part of the reason why we have the gap.
Thank you.
So,
So we have to make our decisions on March 19th, a month from now.
I have one more question I wanted to ask, just. But,
oh, sorry, I
When
just
we're
wanted to
done.
point out that our edits for the warrant are due on March 20th, so that's why we kind of made it the last possible date.
right, so, my other question is actually back, maybe I'm changing the subject, is back to the CRC presentation. Which, it was just a question I had I went and did some research on what, and this is for you, Adam, so, you know, I know you're looking at your text there, but, you know.
No, I'm looking at my diabetes because I gotta give myself.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that,
Okay.
that be cool. I was looking at the guide, there's, planning board guidelines for doing lips that, with a whole process and timeframes and what's required. I'm sure you're familiar with it. I never saw it, but yeah, but anyway, here it is. I verified with Al, I got them from Alex this afternoon. And then there's also, a ZBA set of rules and regulations for chapter 40 projects. And, I would request, if the committee supports it, of course, just, you know, again, from the planning board or for, they said they met with Lee Newman last
So,
week and
just
stuff.
wanna make a distinction.
Yeah,
The planning board is not the department, is not the planning department. When
I
an
know.
applicant goes in, like you did with NHA.
yeah,
And had sometimes a team meeting, sometimes we'll have a meeting,
Yeah.
with just Lee and with Alex,
Yeah.
sometimes we'll also be
Yeah.
with. The building commissioner, that's not the planning board process.
Yeah.
That's a planning process.
no, I understand, but I'm just referring to what's in these guidelines, what's referred to in these guidelines.
So they'll go through in a friendly 40B through the
Mm.
ZBA.
Yeah.
Not through the planning board.
No, I understand. That's why they're two sets of guidelines.
Right,
Because the planning board is still sort of involved in this preliminary stage, or the planning department, as you said here.
right, but not the planning board.
Okay, I'm just reading what I'm saying in here. Maybe they don't do it anymore here. That's all. Anyway, I'm just asking
Sorry, yeah.
from the great planning universe, you know, including the ZBA, you know, from the committee, when I look at what has to be the timing and what, you know, everything, and it all is getting this site eligibility letter from the state and what's done with what the town prefers to be done ahead of time before you even apply for the site eligibility letter, and what happens afterwards. And I can send these things to Lauren, which I got, you know, how realistic is it that they're going to be able to put that preliminary application in the fall? Because it looks like a lot. That's all.
It's up to them. But that's a legitimate question to ask if they're.
Well,
not
Didn't we
saying-
already ask them?
Well, we did, before I read all this stuff, they said, oh, no problem, is, you know, they've given it the interest last night. But you know, just like to get a confirmation about that.
I think they did talk about their process. I thought they said it was 3 months.
I know, and that's what I would like not to guess. I'm just looking for some second opinion on that sort of
So I
thing.
think I guess we can follow up, Lauren, and ask them for their, what their schedule is.
Well, they gave it to us.
In writing, what their schedule is for zoning compliance in advance of their application in the fall.
So the reason I ask is, you know, I totally support this project. You know, if there was nothing else going on, you know, the Charles River project is incredible. I know how hard they've been working on it, but they won't. I know a lot about it actually, but another way is, you know, is there?
Way to get,
Can we take it up? Can we take it? No, not a year, half a year. In other words, if they can really get it all done by the fall, do we say, well, let's, you know, make a decision on them in the fall, and then that actually, the free cash that like rolls over and everything, you know, works sort of into the new year at that point of value, and that,
ultimately, what that would do is make more cash available for NHA and bump them for another fiscal.
well, when there will be more cash available.
Yeah, but I don't think there'll be more cash available until the next levy. Which will be like a year from now.
Well,
Exactly.
And
Cause we're already talking about using cash that would have rolled
Yeah.
over
I know,
ordinarily.
I know where you're going, but I think we have to treat each entity equally.
no, I'm not saying that way, yeah.
And, you know, the town moved, you know, pretty well to align itself with NHA.
Yeah,
And I think we have to do that fairly with other developers too.
oh, I agree. Just asking questions.
I get it, I get it. I thought of that too.
Well,
Can I just go back to this question of, do we have 6.5 million or not?
Yes,
We do.
We roughly, we do need to hold a certain amount back. Because we're working off of estimates of what is gonna be, this would mean that we would be utilizing what the committee would otherwise be appropriating into the community housing fund and the general reserve at the May town meeting.
So
And-
how much, do we have a sense of how much we have to hold back?
No,
10%?
we asked, Cecilia would need to talk with the finance director to come up with that number.
So let's take a guess, it's 10%. So what we're talking about, instead of 6.5 million, it's 5.9. And I think if we.
Well, it
conserve-
wouldn't be 10% of the whole, it would be 10. Can
Why
I,
don't we-
can I show
why
the,
don't we just ask Cecilia,
we can ask Cecilia. Yes.
because she offered.
But all I'm
The last-
saying, the bigger point is
It would be-
that what their funders need to see is a commitment. The second is a firm commitment from the town. The secondary element is the amount. And they can, if there is a $300,000 delta, because we have to hold back, which is maybe a prudent thing that we're required to do, which is fine. Then on a $50 million project, when they're going into HLC, they'll ask a little more for HLC and a little more for their tax credits, which would be a proportional rise in credit.
Right.
You know,
Right, and it also maybe if we're pushing back on Charles River Center, you know, like we said, if we can take off $400,000 for a principled reason, and then it's okay. I mean, I think, and we haven't seen the new numbers from NHA, but there may be things like that there as well. So we can shave them both if we have I'm just trying to figure out what the number is we're trying to get to.
yes, exactly.
So let's say 5.9 for now, and we'll fine tune that over the next week.
Exactly.
Yeah, the only holdback would be on the 2026 appropriation to community housing and general reserve.
Yes,
In case the estimates are somewhat different from
Yes,
the
sure.
actual collections. We're not talking about holding back on what's already sitting in our reserve account.
yes, right.
And was that one of the three, because she was saying there's 3 pots that you have. And what are the 3 pots?
The housing, general reserve, and free cash.
And free cash.
Yeah.
And which is the one that we have to hold back on?
Let me share this. So this chart here is looking at a little smaller so we can see it. This is looking at appropriation of the 2026.
We need that yellow, the one that's,
So the community housing pot that we will be appropriating in May is estimated to be 876,000. And the general reserve is estimated to be 1.2 million.
So it's 2 million.
What we already have in our accounts right now, ignoring that column at the end that says CPA receipts. What is currently sitting in our reserve account for community housing is 872,545. And then we have 87,215 in the general reserve. 3.4 million in free cash. That column CPA receipts at the end was just if you were to appropriate the 2026 and use it, appropriate it directly to a housing project now. That's the additional money that would be available.
so those, but the 3 added together is where you get the 6 point. What do you get?
6.5.
6.5, right. So then we're saying, but out of that, we have to hold back some percent of something.
We have to hold back, some
She says that in the paragraph that towards
Some
the end.
portion here. This is this column, this chart, which is showing the 2026 appropriations that the committee will be making in May. We'd have to hold some portion back of the 876,000 and the 1.2 million general reserve appropriations. Because if you opt to use those for community housing projects now, rather than appropriating them into the funds, we just have to save a little bit in case the actual receipts do not match these estimates
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. So we're gonna ask Cecilia to give us an estimate
Yeah.
of what she would recommend.
Right.
To be prudent, it's 10%, maybe it's 5, but at least we.
Yeah,
have
I mean-
an idea.
Right.
And now we have also an approach, because I think the way Emily laid it out is right, we work top down, bottom up, we can. Both from the. With respect to the whole back and also with respect to that, how they're treating the 5
Yes.
units. And their other rent structures, very different than more profitable today. Makes the for-profit world seem so much easier.
Yeah, I just wanna bring this up, and I'm not making any decision for the committee here, but, my number was lower, because I was assuming that we would be funding the other projects as well. Whereas the 6.5 is what's,
Takes everything up and there's no other project funded.
so we gotta straighten that out.
So it is, so maybe you are right in the end, because you're back with an active envelope for an engineer, it's usually pretty good.
Well, keep in mind that we have money within the historic resources reserve to fund
That one.
Yes.
that one. So that one's kind of,
So we
I
are
also
somewhere
took it out
around
of the equation.
5.5, 5.9.
Right, and like, we're gonna put together a short memo that would just kind of, summarize that.
Yeah.
The abstract from, which is
Right.
great, so that we're all on the same way.
And concurrently, we're gonna, work with Emily, to get a little more information, to ask them to sharpen their pencil a little bit.
Right, and then
That'll help. And we should, Reg is right, we should ask them as well for their schedule for zoning compliance in relation to their application submission. That's all.
They didn't give us a schedule for zoning?
They give a high level schedule,
Yeah,
but it's
start,
not.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
So they just said 3 months, but we don't really know from when to when.
so all I know is you're supposed to do all these meetings.
While everybody's on vacation.
Well, and it's all spelled out in these memos.
Yeah.
And I have done this, and it's hard to get them all scheduled and get them all, and sometimes you have to do them twice or 3 times when you have to have flooding in your neighborhood, for example.
That's a bit of a different process, because they're not going through site plan, they're not going for special.
I get it, but
It's still a process.
read this, and
Yeah,
then, you'll see what I mean, I think, is all I'm trying to say here.
All right, so I think we've got some clear direction, and I think we have a path that deals with these contingencies for both the bond and the non-bond. So. And Keith, I'm gonna talk to you about the bond.
Yeah, I'm interested in learning more but I'm also interested in hearing that lowest cost associated with all of these applications and exactly how much money is available. Because I think the most important thing is to fund the deserving projects that we can. And that, the assurance of that is, I think, goal 1.
For sure.
Yeah.
Chair, would you like a motion to adjourn?
If anybody has any other comments.
Well, you had some you were gonna do other project updates.
Well, I was asking, the various committee members who were liaisons, if they had any, information to, provide, or if you have anything on NHA.
Well, there is the plan project you were gonna report on, or Lauren was gonna report on what we just heard from Chrissy this afternoon.
oh, we have not heard, we don't have any information from Chris Heap on High Rock.
Well, I thought he
as of
said that
yet.
he was checking with the Department of Revenue, on the eligibility.
Yes, in considering it further after the meeting that he
Right.
had with us and with you. One of the things he did was reach out to the DOR to kind of discuss it with them. And he was hoping to have heard back by today, but had not. So he will be in touch with us as soon as he has that conversation and has some information for us.
Hopefully before the 28th. The 26th, I mean.
It sounds like it would be fairly imminent, if he was expecting or thinking he might hear from
Is
you
that the
today.
27th deadline?
26th. No, this is the, plan, the small planning study. It
Yeah,
has
yeah.
nothing to do with anything we've been talking about.
Oh, you just put the 26th for the date for the CPC.
Well, I'm hoping that we could talk about it at some point, but we're sort of been in limbo for a month now or two with respect to Chris's, concerns about the eligibility or.
Dave, you don't need me anymore, right?
No, I think we're
Okay.
Thank
Good night. Bye.
Take care.
So, got any
Okay.
other updates?
Anybody else have anything?
I move to adjourn.
All right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Keith, did you second that one?
I did.
Okay, good.
I'm busy, I don't know, did I? Yeah, I think I did.
Well done. You're like, I'm crazy.
Back in calculus.
Okay.
You know. So. Yeah, I didn't fly, it's called.
Oh,
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did 25. Sure. Affordable housing. Yeah, it's just, it wouldn't talk. Yeah, it's, I think it's hard now. Yeah. Yeah, you just have a pond and make it easier.
better.
Well, you know, the other thing we haven't talked about,
What's going on over there?
Trump
Is she in?
Trump craziness in
Oh, my
Washington DC. They're working their way around the HUD, and you know what they've been doing
Wait,
to
I don't even think.
first AID and then, and education.
slitting their throats.
Well, so the intent that's emerging is that
Oh, I know, I know. Oh,
do the Musk thing
I don't
to, you know,
understand. You can't-
every department consecutively, they can't do them all simultaneously, but they're gonna do it to everybody. So all of a sudden, we're expecting,
Okay.
you know, we get lots of money to run
I mean, I don't
housing
mean that
authority
facetious.
through